Welcome back to the Adaptive Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Hotho. On today's episode, we're going to be talking with Morgan Ramos. Morgan is an adaptive CrossFit Games athlete, and she competes in the lower BK division. BK stands for below knee, and that means that most of the people in that division, they have a functioning knee on their impacted limb, but below that knee, they might be missing part of a limb or have other things that impact the ability to generate full power with that leg. And in Morgan's case, we'll hear about a rare genetic disorder she has that impacts her leg. In this interview, Morgan and I are going to talk about her experience as a CrossFit coach and as a competitive CrossFit athlete. She's competed all over the world in multiple competitions, and she's working to expand access for adaptive athletes in competitive CrossFit spaces. So, Morgan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for asking me to join it. I am an adaptive CrossFit Games athlete. I compete in the lower below knee division. And so really need to be interviewed by somebody also in the same space as me. So looking forward to chatting.
Thanks, Morgan. Yeah, it's super fun to be in the space. So I can kind of I have a sense for how many different stories and divisions there are in the space. So I know there's a buttload that I don't know, but I'm enjoying learning the nuances of everybody. And I feel like the times that I've been at competitions, there's so much going on. And sometimes when I compete, I'm in my zone a little bit, or kind of like in my tribe, that I have a hard time getting out and meeting other people. So this is a fun way to connect the community, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So you are lower BK, or lower below knee, which we abbreviate as lower BK. So that means that you have some impairment that impacts you below the knee or something like that. Can you tell us about your impairment?
Yes. So I'm a little tricky. I'm an interesting one. So I have my full left leg, but I still compete in lower BK. If you look primarily at the division, everybody is amputees. Exciting thing for this year is there's going to be a few people I've noticed from the Open that are coming out that also have their legs as well, like me. So competitive side will be cool that I finally get to compete a little bit more against people like me. But which is also showing that the division is growing in itself too, through all the media and things like that have been coming out and stuff like this. But so I am impaired. I was born with a rare disease called P10 Hamartoma Tumor Syndrome. Basically, it's a genetic mutation that your body controls its growth levels. And so this can lead to cancer. If you let's say you're getting something that's going to trigger cancer in your body, this gene essentially kills it off. But in my case, when the gene doesn't work, it overgrows different things. So when I was in fertilization or baby, my body made too much veins, essentially. So my leg from my glute all the way down to below my knee, which is why I'm in that division, is impaired with venous clumps. They kind of look like spider veins, and they're on the surface. They're in between the muscles, so they weren't able to fully grow or develop. I also have them around the nerves. So I live with quite a bit of chronic pain and limited range of motion and stuff like that from there. But wheelwatt has been amazing since technically I am impaired from the hip down. I'm stronger. I'm blessed to be able to pull some of the weights of the BK. I also can run. So that's why I'm in that division versus AK. And I just stay flexible too, as we know, and you know, as an athlete too, there's so many divisions constantly growing. I just want the opportunity to show my story and also play and have a good time with everybody. So I've been in there.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Yes, I can definitely relate. I am a neuromoderate, which by its very name says that it is a subjective category, correct? Neuro, minor, moderate, and major. We're just going to figure out, and standing diagnosed. We're just going to figure out where to put people. And it's a process. So I appreciate how you kind of know that you're in a category that's kind of trying to do the best it can. Right.
Yes. And that's always what I've tried to tell the staff and I try to tell other athletes. I mean, I've been in, the adaptive CrossFit space since probably about 2022. I've had people reach out and they're like, hey, I'm frustrated with the classification. I want to go here. They tell me here, or I don't have the right paperwork, things like that. And I think it just comes down to how bad essentially you want it and how bad do you want to be able to compete and push yourself. And sometimes you need to put yourself out there. You might be dead last, but trust the process. They'll find the right division for you. And also you'll find within yourself too what you can bring to the table. Like in my case, when I first started, I used to be 340 pounds. Made wheelwatt 2022 by honestly just very small registration numbers and was able to make it. And I was like, you know what? Hey, I want to go be in an arena full of people like me. And so I went and I was like, hey, I want to do this the right way. I also want to get healthy. And so it started my journey, and now we're in 2025. And so I'm down about 60 pounds, et cetera. But it also shows that I think the athletes that really want to compete, they'll trust the process, trust that they may need to get a little healthier, find the right thing to figure out, okay, is it my disability or what other external factors? You know what I mean?
Oh,
So
I know what you mean. And I don't want to turn this podcast into a whole thing about that, but I mean, you're right. It's a
yes.
nuance between your fitness level and your disability, and
Yes.
delineating between what is limited by your disability and what is
Mhm.
limited by your fitness level,
Yes,
right?
yeah. So adaptive CrossFit in itself covers so many aspects of not only compared to like a normal athlete, they could be like, hey, you know what, I need to drop like 5 to 10 pounds to get ready for the open. Well, in our case, this makes or breaks if we're able to walk, if we're able to like even neuro, some of those disorders and stuff
Yeah.
like that. If you're able to get through the day. So it's an extra challenge being an adaptive athlete, kind of figuring out those two.
Yeah, yeah. And then also when it comes to the classification side, I feel like the more we're able to continue raising awareness about the sport and getting more people classified, the better the classification system will get, right? The more data
Exactly.
points you
Yeah.
get, the more different types of people you get, and you get to see them compete against each other and go, oh, that was, that might not have been the right
Yes.
classification. At least we're learning,
Yes.
right?
Yes, exactly. Which comes into things like your podcast and also like social media, stuff like that. And also just being willingness to try and know that it's a growing sport.
Yes. Okay, so now that sidebar about the future of adaptive CrossFit, let's talk about you and your journey into competitive CrossFit. I mean, so you said you did the 2022 games, the 2023, and the 2024. But
Yes.
were you always athletic? Did you always want to do that? Or, yeah,
Yeah. I like to say my journey is like a roller coaster.
okay.
So, since obviously I was born with my impairment, my parents were, my mom primarily raised me, but she was always very like, you know what, hey, you're having a hard time walking, you have this limitation, you're not able to be like the normal kids, but if you want to go try this and do it, but no, like, you're not going to quit. So, I remember I would come home from soccer practice and obviously being impaired in my leg, huge challenges to overcome. And I'd be like, this sucks. I'm the worst one on the team. But she was like, nope, you're going to finish it. And so I've always played sports in some regard, but always been fit. When COVID happened, I was already a CrossFit level 2 trainer and the gyms closed. And I think just kind of like all of us had to figure out where we are and who we are as a person.
Hmm.
Put on a lot of weight, but CrossFit was always kind of still around. I was working out to some degree. Um, and then I think I just had a switch, which especially once I qualified for WILWOD 2022, that I was like, I need to get into this routine. That I didn't want to be that coach that didn't look like a coach because, unfortunately, I
Yeah.
mean, that's still a factor on top of I was already a adaptive coach. So there's some things I can't demonstrate. And I didn't want it to look like necessary. It was because I was unfit. It was because of my leg, vice versa. So been off and on. And ever since then, I think after the 2023 games, I actually had a friend from Wheelwad that was like, hey, you've come a long way, but there's more. And you just need to either, do you want to do this or do you not? And after that, I was lit a fire. And so I was able to really got into this and been able to now be an international athlete. I've been able to go to different comps and stuff like that from there. So it's been a roller coaster,
Yeah,
but I would
yeah.
like to
So
say we're going up.
yeah,
That's been the
yeah.
fun
No,
part.
I would think you're on the up and up. I mean, what did you
Yes.
finish at the games this year?
Yes, I was actually top five. So out of seven, but hey, top five, I'll
Hey,
take it.
that's okay. That's
Yes. So
great.
it was
That's
just to
great.
be there was amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I think what you're talking about is something that I've heard from a few other adaptive athletes. I didn't realize how many adaptive athletes in the space have their L1s and L2s, and
yeah.
actually coach. Like I have an L1 and I coach, but like I didn't think I was a trendsetter, but I also didn't know how many of us there were out there.
Yeah.
And so that feeling though that you just described of I didn't want it to be that I was unfit, but that my disability might be the thing keeping me from demoing this movement, not that I was actually out of shape.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Kind of like a added, not necessarily pressure, but motivation. And same thing, I was really getting to know the wheelwad space to see how many of us do coach or have full-time jobs and still train. And so it's a good.
yeah, and we almost have like um, we're committed to the methodology too, right? Because we
Yeah,
don't
definitely.
want to represent the methodology poorly because of our disability. We actually want to represent it as well as an able-bodied person could, or darn near as close as we could,
Yeah.
uh, because it's such a good methodology. So that might be a sidebar again.
Yeah.
Uh,
All right. There's a lot of power to the methodology. I mean, I don't think you can meet anybody in adaptive CrossFit that won't say it's changed their life. So I think that's also why we're so committed to it. So I'm a
Yes.
proud cult member.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so you have a unique training situation. Tell me about that. So you live in
Yes.
Texas, but
Yes. So I live in Texas, but primarily I compete under Mexico. So I'm considered a Mexican athlete. When going back to, I am biracial or mixed myself. So after the 2023 games, when I kind of stepped up my training and then 2024 CrossFit Games hit, I realized on top of all of us having full-time jobs, a lot of the heavy hitters all had coaches and stuff like that.
yes.
So I was blessed that just by, I think, the algorithm or the CrossFit gods, I started getting messages from different coaches and stuff like that. And a little sidebar, right before the games, probably a month before, I had 4 deaths in the family and I had lost my job and was just,
Mm.
I determined I needed to make it to the games. And so I wanted to really, at the same time, through that grieving process, dive into my family's roots and really invest in figuring out as much as I could and able to honor, I guess, that grieving. And so I got a message from Wadix, which is based in Mexico. And at that time, I was already like, I want to learn more, invest in finally learning Spanish and things like that. And so one thing after another lined up, and it's been amazing. I feel like I'm at the strongest I've been, but also I'm now able to kind of carry adaptive CrossFit and the uniqueness of my story by having my leg over into another population too. So
Yeah, that's really cool. So you train out of a gym in Mexico, you represent Mexico. Your flag on a leaderboard is
Mexico, yes.
Mexico.
And
Yeah,
then when I'm on the podium, I use that flag too. But
I
yes,
love that.
primarily I'm super deep South Texas. Like it's about 30-minute drive to Mexico anyway. So I do train in Texas, but when I can, ideally this summer, actually, I will be going back and forth to try and get make sure I'm at the best I can for the 2025 games, hopefully.
Yeah, and you have a nickname on your apparel that
Yes.
is it an homage to your roots, or what is the nickname for you?
Yeah, I started off actually with the little duck. I have a pretty bad limp based on the impairment of my leg. And so I made a logo that the duck has a tattoo like mine and has the blue leg as me. So I say it's my waddle instead of being like, oh, I limp and stuff like that, just to kind of make a little humor to the situation. So that's why there's a duck on there. And then a lot of, now that I'm kind of mixed between the both countries, they call me La Guarita, which is basically like fair skinned. So although I am Hispanic, I am pretty fair compared to some of the population. So it's a little funny nickname, but it's been neat to have. So that is actually my first international tee that the brand in Mexico is making for me. So that's super cool.
Wow, that is really cool. All right, so let's go back to the gym and kind of like life in the gym a little bit. So, what is one of the best moments that you've had in the gym?
Yeah, I know we kind of talked about coaching. I honestly would say my best moments have just been that to see people come in and be like, I can't do XYZ and see them accomplish that is really cool. And obviously, I do personally, I mean, you're a coach as well. I try not to immediately come out of the gate of like, hey, I'm adaptive. This is what's going on. I kind of like them to find and like follow my own journey on their own. So they don't have that pressure of like, well, look at what you do and I can't do this. So
Yeah,
that has also been cool to kind of see somebody be like, hey, I didn't realize what you go through, but yet you encourage me to just show up 3 days a week, 4 days a week, or hit these heavy weights. So that's probably been my best moments in the gym is being able to be a part of somebody's story without them realizing how much they're impacting my own story to keep training and such like that too.
yeah, and getting to celebrate the wins too
Yeah.
that our clients have, or that that our gym members have. Well, what's one of the harder moments in the gym for you when it comes to your impairment?
I, just like all of us, I tend to put a little extra pressure on myself. And I'm sure you go through this too, that despite our limitations, sometimes it's like, oh, I just can't do XYZ or I haven't figured this out. Why am I like, I'm giving 110%. And then somebody that can come in 3 times a week, skips a month, and they're like RX kipping beautiful
Yes.
gymnastics. So
Ah,
yes, so I think that's probably the hardest thing is I tend to need to take a step back sometimes and realize, like I said, it's a roller coaster and
mhm.
certain things are going to take time. And even my adaptive journey to now be in 2025, and I started this in 2022. So that's definitely the hardest thing. I think is sometimes I'm my own worst enemy. So
Yeah, yeah. The comparison trap that we get into, right? With
yes,
able-bodied
yeah,
athletes or the RX
yeah,
athletes.
yeah.
Okay,
So
so at those 2024 games, the ones where you finished fourth out of seventh, I believe, right?
fifth,
Fifth?
yes,
Okay,
but
fifth. Hey,
yes.
still top five, like you said, top
Yes,
five, primo.
exactly. Just the fact I was there, it was actually my birthday that weekend. So I was just smiling ear to ear. I was like, I'm in the worst pain of my life, but I'm at the CrossFit Games and it's my birthday,
Oh,
so
why were you
it
in
was a good
pain?
time.
Was that
I
right
think
after
just
your was that right after your family had passed? Is that what you were saying? Like that was the month before that?
yeah,
Okay,
mentally, it was just really hard time. And I mean,
yeah.
the programming was a little different for the
Hmm.
games, but obviously, any competition that I think day two, you're like, I feel great, I can get through it. Day three, you're just an emotional dump. I mean, bless the Wheel One staff. One of them found me like after before the last event, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I just started crying, and I
Oh,
was like, "I don't even know why I'm crying," and they were just like, "Oh," so giving little hugs and stuff.
yeah.
But I'm sure you've been there. Day three is rough. Day two, we're invincible. Day three, you want to cry.
Yeah, yeah. I think this year felt different again because of knowing what 2023 was like in terms of the intensity. And so honestly, it sort of felt like
Like a little
when is
more.
this gonna get a
Yeah.
little bit more intense in terms of the volume? Just because
Yeah.
like, you know, every event except for one was sub 6, I think.
Yes. And I kind of went back, or they think they're the athlete council, if that's the right name of it. We do have
Mhm.
that adaptive athlete on there now. And so I do think they're trying to figure out, hey, what would be better programming for semifinals in the games? I mean, in the moment, I didn't really realize it, but then after I was like, oh, wow, this is kind of short compared to what normally we do. But at
Yeah.
the same time, too, I feel like they were trying a new venue. We unfortunately were just dealing with that death of Lazard, too. And so, new venue, you had all the eyes on CrossFit. And then now we're at what, 16 plus divisions. So
Yeah, I mean,
logistically too,
yeah. Yeah,
they had
30
a lot.
heats. Like no
Yeah.
joke about running 30 heats. I mean, you had to do
Yeah.
6 minute
Yeah.
time caps or else you would have been there all day. I mean,
Yes.
so yeah, it's certainly
Should be
nothing
interesting
against
this
the
year.
team. Yeah. Yeah,
Should
it's
be
nothing
interesting
against.
this year, see what they can kind of figure out a little bit more. But I have heard that from across the board. And then when I went back to it, I was like, oh, yeah, that was kind of fast compared to normal.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So what was one of your favorite memories from the 2024 games?
I think just the journey, not necessarily with the workouts. Like I love any kind of workout, but just to kind of be around everybody and see that there's actually people in the community that knew me now and different things like that, or even the media team. Kind of backtrack story, I guess. Some of the media team I know from competitions here in Texas, so then
Mm,
able to see them at the games. I mean, and they've known me. I don't have a lot of adaptive athletes where I'm at, but I've always tried to still do a competition, just ask for accommodations and know like, hey, I may get dead last, but I want to be able to talk about my disability and the wheel platform. So a couple of the photographers have known me since 2019 and to meet me at the CrossFit Games. So that was probably the highlight, was just to be like, cool, we're here and we want to do more for next year.
all right, so let's go to a lightning round. I'm going to ask you some quick
Yeah,
fire
let's do it.
questions, all right?
Mhm.
Would you rather do Fran or Murph?
Fran,
Fran.
I
Just
hate running. A
okay.
leg
Okay.
aside, I hate running.
All right, if you could pick the music every day in the gym, what would it be?
Oof, I listen to everything, probably from Spanish to like I'll hit even like sad country music. So
Really?
probably just a cocktail of the both. So they
All
always tell me,
right.
don't let Coach Morgan on the DJ.
All right, so if you were doing Fran, let's put Fran out there since Fran's the workout you want
Uh-huh.
to do. And you could pick one song because if you're doing Fran right, you're probably getting it done in one song.
Yes.
What's that one song that you're putting on to get through Fran?
Ooh, this is good. I would probably say there's a Zach Bryan song where it's something in the orange. That would be my jam. I like that when that comes on during the workout.
Something in the orange?
Yes, you're gonna have to listen to it. Super country, super sad, but it's got a good beat.
Okay. I don't know if I want to be sad in the middle of Fran, but I am going to check that one out. Any
Right?
more
You just
sad,
gotta
I
find the
mean, in the
groove.
middle of Fran.
Right?
Yeah.
You're already doing Fran, so
Yeah. Okay. So, Eve, what is your go-to pre-competition snack?
ooh, pre-competition snack. I like an English muffin and peanut butter and honey.
Oh,
Yes, and an energy drink, which is probably not recommended, but I love a good just quick slam some caffeine before I work out.
I like it. I like it. When I'm competing, I'm always sipping on cold brew. That's my way of like just
Yes.
keeping that caffeine level just kind of
Mhm.
jacked up. Okay, so you said you would do Fran instead of Murph, but what would be your ideal workout if you could program a
I,
workout?
I'm trying to DT. The hang
Oh
clean
yeah.
deadlift. Oh, I love DT. I think that came out in semifinals too, and I was like, yes. And then it went into like some barbell thing, and I lost it. But
All right. Well, as we kind of start wrapping up the conversation a little bit, um, if you were to talk to someone who was interested in adaptive CrossFit or someone who is maybe you but a little bit younger, like dealing with some sort of congenital disability, what would you tell them to get them involved in adaptive CrossFit?
Yeah, it's cheesy, but it's just like CrossFit says. Sometimes the hardest part is just walking through the door. And I think just enjoying the process of there's going to be peaks in your career and lows, but knowing that if you're able to persevere through that for yourself, but also you might encourage somebody else. And something I use kind of common in my posts or different things I've been able to do is just that I like to prove wrong those medical reports that said I couldn't walk or couldn't do something. So I try to remind people like, hey, it doesn't have to be something medical. It could be any doubt you have, but let's work together to accomplish it. And it's worth the risk. What's the worst that's going to happen? So,
Right, right. Yeah. I love what Kevin Ogar said on the first day of the 2024 games when he was like, you guys, this is to prove to those doctors who said,
yeah.
you can't do this, we
Yeah.
can.
And that even gave me chills already. Like I love
Hmm.
when they say that because it's just to be surrounded by people that have all just said like, yeah, screw you. I want to try this is really cool. And so
Yeah.
I think it's worth the risk, even if you're not going to make it to the games, you're not making it to semifinals, you just always keep moving forward and you're also helping grow the sport. So
Yeah. So you've done a bunch of competitions outside of the competitive year of CrossFit, the open semis and the games.
yes.
Um,
Yeah.
tell me about that a little bit, because I feel like I never get to those competitions, but
Mhm.
it looks like you're having a great time at those and just getting to
Yeah.
be being an advocate for the space. So what are those competitions like?
Yeah.
Tell us about them a little bit.
I appreciate you bringing that up. I mean, I am blessed that I am able to, one, financially through fundraising and things like that, able to go to these different competitions. But so Wheelwad is the main programmer, but now they have Adapt Ion, or All or Nothing basically. They do different competitions, but mainly out of Europe. So Marbella Championship, which I did in October, is programmed by them. And I saw that there was a lot of effort being put in to grow the adaptive division. I was blessed that I was able to take time off from work and go over there and just experience that, that I feel now that I've been able to travel and go compete internationally, you have the same feeling you do when you come across Wheelwad or even your home gym, and we all have the same goals. And I think especially sometimes there's so many eyes on Wheelwad and that organization in the CrossFit Games that some of the athletes forget we need to invest into those little or smaller competitions
Yeah.
essentially to help grow the space. Sea Dog was another one I was able to do, which is actually coming up soon. That's in Jupiter, Florida. Adam and Kelly are amazing, huge advocates for the sport. They always even fly into the games to help judge and stuff like that. That was super neat. And then I'm actually headed to Mexico next month. They have a competition, a little tricky on this one. They don't have an adaptive division, but I told them like, hey, I'll work with you. I understand I'm not going to place. I honestly don't care about that. I just want to make sure we're going to grow the sport to next year be able to offer the adaptive division in different, maybe even 3 categories, 4 categories, whatever, just to get people out there and know that they have somewhere that they can train too. Because a lot of people get intimidated. They don't think like, oh, I'm going to advance past the open. I don't want to sign up for the open. We forget that they can also do these in between competitions. And so this has been cool to see in my own training that I really haven't had an off season. I've
Yeah.
just kind of gone from event to event, but I am one of those I need something to train for or I'll lose it. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
I think the able-bodied community kind of has way more access to competitions
Yes.
that they can do. And while I could go do like intermediate at an able-bodied comp and do
Hmm.
pretty good, there's something, or do fine, like there's something about the camaraderie, right? Of being
Yeah.
again in a space that is, even if there's only 3 or 4 of you in the division, just like, guys, we're here. Like we're doing
Hmm.
this. We're on a small scale doing that thing of showing
Yeah.
people that this kind of fitness is possible. That maybe there's a kid out there or a parent who has a kid with a disability going, oh, I didn't know this existed.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes we get scared to be told no. And so I've just even before I entered into Wheelwad, like I said, I would do like competitions here locally. And I always had that standard of I may be last, but you know what? We're able to motivate somebody that is normal or able bodied. And then also we might motivate somebody that's even watching. So it's similar to that. I found that even like this one is called the Spring Break Games. I messaged them and said, hey, I want to come play, but I want to also have the opportunity to talk with you, especially as you're moving into, I believe, year 5 of the competition, on how we can start those small steps for the inclusion process. So in that case, I usually, as the workouts come out, I let them know what I need. And then I have like I'll take time because I'm also an adaptive trainer and say, if you were to offer this category, this is what you should do from the past and vice versa, and kind of take my own time and energy for that research, but able to ensure that the following year we can work together for the division
That's
to
cool.
grow.
So I got 2 questions based off of that. All right, one. Are you going to Sea
bring
Dog?
it, give it to me. I would love to. Unfortunately, probably not because I did squeeze in Miami and then I'll be headed over there. But I am definitely highly recommend that competition. Are you going to go to it?
I'm going to go this year. Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. Wear sunscreen. And I got a really nasty sunburn last year. I'm a huge junk headband wearer and I looked like a raccoon for like 2 months after.
But I love it. Okay.
It's great vibes. Great vibes. You'll have a great time. It's also, like we were saying, it's a good milestone. I believe that's after the Open, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good milestone. You know what? Hey, to get you kind of ready for semis, or you know what? Here's what I can do better too. And you get to see everybody that you see at the games and stuff too. So some of my best friends, honestly, I've met from adaptive CrossFit, and they live halfway across the world.
yeah, and I live in the Tampa Bay area, so getting over to Jupiter is like easy.
Even better. Take it.
I'm trying to convince.
Soak it all in.
I'm trying to convince one of my neuromoderate friends to fly into Tampa. And I'm like, dude, I'll pick you up. We'll drive over to Jupiter. We'll get a place together. You know, it'll just be like, there's 3 of us with CP that are in a text thread together and we all want to do it together. And like, it'd just be so cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And hey, you never know who could be watching that event. They might have a sibling. They may have somebody related in a similar story. And I know, especially with the neuro division, you're kind of in my boat where we look normal to the naked eye, but it also opens a good conversation start of like, well, why are they out there? So. Mm-hmm. I'm excited for you guys. That'll be fun.
Thank you. Yeah. And then the second question is, you said you're an adaptive trainer. Tell us a little bit about that program.
I did it back in like 2021, where I think it was still Kevin primarily and Alec and all them. And I've just stayed with that from there. Similar kind of backtrack of what we were saying about my journey during COVID. I was just primarily focusing on coaching and was like, you know what, this resource is out. I'm an adaptive athlete. I was trying to get into actually qualifying for a spot for the Wheelwad Games. And so I did that. And I mean, that's amazing too. There's a lot of power. I think adaptive athletes don't realize that, not only in showing our story on social media or with others, but it's important, like I said, even when we've had that experience together as coaches, for people to realize, hey, they fight so many obstacles day to day, but they can do this. I could do this too. And so, but and then it opens up the resource where now I'm at 4 or 5 years later, I'm able to help these competitions of here's the direction I would like to go. And then I also do always try to point them back to Wheelwad as the OG.
yeah, right,
and go
exactly.
from there. Yeah, so I'm like, I'm just a small little in the pyramid, but yeah, it's an amazing resource. It also, I think, lets us know different ways that we can do things too, because even when you've seen in competitions, something may go different, you might need to do a different range of motion, etc. And now they have the adaptive judging course too, which actually I'm planning to take that too, to see, one, because we're going to get judged with it, but also so I know for other divisions and such.
Nice. Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Morgan. This has been a great conversation. Thanks so much for taking the time today.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much too for having me. It was really neat, and I'm looking forward to watching your podcast come out and the others that are to come.
Thanks, Morgan. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of the Adaptive Athlete Podcast. I would really appreciate it if you shared this episode with someone who's either an adaptive athlete or knows an adaptive athlete, or who coaches in a CrossFit gym with adaptive athletes. These last 6 episodes that we've done have just been a goldmine about understanding who adaptive athletes are, what their unique needs are, and how they can be coached. Because as you probably discovered, many of our adaptive athletes are also coaches, so they can speak directly into that space. I've got 2 things I want to make sure that you know about. First, Morgan and I talked about the Sea Dog Summer Showdown in our conversation. And that competition is just a month away. It's down in Florida, and you can register for it. It's got a great able-bodied and adaptive community there. So if you're an adaptive athlete and you want to get another competition in before semis, before the games, Sea Dog might be the great opportunity to do it. I'll be there. I know there's a bunch of adaptive athletes that'll be there, and I can't wait to meet you. And second, we'll be doing another live call-in show after 25.2 on Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. I realized last week it got a little funky. We were on Twitch, but this week we will be on YouTube. All the details will be on our Instagram page. Follow us at the Adaptive Athlete Pod. I'm Matt Hotho. I'll see you next time.